And that was Thin Lizzy with Renegade. I absolutely love that song. And that's an excellent album, that too, as well. I remember when that album came out, it was the first album that I was confident enough to try and play guitar along with it. But yeah, I couldn't, for some reason, I couldn't figure out the chords. And that was before I realized that Thin Lizzy actually tuned the guitars down half a step so it fits in the same key as Phil Lynnett's voice. So you learn, that was like, for years I was like, okay, this sounds like Jailbreak. How come it's not going along with it? It's because I didn't understand that the guitar was tuned down a step. I was out of step. So this is the Philosophy of Now, hour 2. I spoke for nearly an hour straight then on that one, and that was not, that was done from the heart and not from a London School of Economics or Fabian or New Statesman press release. Now, the Philosophy of Now. My name is Thomas Sheridan. We're in the second hour. My website is www.thomassheridanarts.com. Any support you can give me would be great. If you want to throw me some money to buy a Chinese meal, if you want to buy a book, even better. You can even help me if you're broke by just sharing the articles on my Facebook page online, because this is not a path I've chosen lightly in this life. It's sort of been foisted upon me in a way. And there's if you see some of the psychotic messages, now I don't hate these people for doing it, but I got messages that I didn't approve from my Facebook or from my blog posts, that there were literally people that were on the point of wanting to kill me for writing that article about Russell Brand. And these would be people who call themselves spiritual truthers. And, here they were wanting to kill me for taking the dopamine rush out of their brains. The fake salvation that they were given by the BBC, the so-called enemy. And I spoke about, we're like children. We really are like children, okay? But at the same time, we're mind-fucked through gaslighting. So you have Jerry and Kate McCann leave their children, two doctors, two educated people that we're supposed to look up to, okay? Leave their children unattended on a foreign holiday, and one of them mysteriously vanishes, and you practically have the social workers coming up to their front door with flowers and chocolate to thank them. And the media, people like that idiot there, Judy Finnegan off Rich and Judy at the time, calling them inspirational parents. Now, at the same time that goes on, you're put in a state of fear. They make you afraid that things are going to happen to you or your children. They make you afraid of going outside. They make you afraid of your neighbors because they don't want us connecting on a soul, individual, cognitive, intellectual level. They don't want us meeting and finding like minds where we can share ideas together. They want us looking for exterior salvation. And a big part of that is this unnecessary phobias that are created, these unnecessary fears that are created. Now, I went to there was no show last week because I went to a Halloween party, and it was mad, and I had a great time. I nearly fell into a portable toilet. That was a laugh. It was fun, It was a bit of crack. You look back and you laugh at these things, and that's life. The things like that are what funny. Like I remember one time, I was on stage playing guitar, and things were going really good, and I started getting this sensation like, oh my God, this is electrifying. And I was actually being electrocuted because the ground on my amplifier had not been grounded properly, the earthing. And so I was literally being electrocuted on stage. And if I had touched the mic, that would have been the end of me. But I wasn't. But you look back on it now, it's funny. It's funny. Because the things you survive are the things, if you can laugh at them. That's why soldiers, when they come back from wars, they'll often joke and laugh, even in the heat of battle, about things that happen that would horrify the average person, because it's a coping mechanism. And they take these coping mechanisms away from us by making us fearful for everything. Now, I found a story that was posted on one of the local free rags, these awful free newspapers you have everywhere now around here, that on the run up to Halloween, and it illustrates this point perfectly. Now, get ready for this one. Apple bobbing can lead to eye injuries. Halloween can be a busy night for A&E departments around the country. Fireworks, sparklers, bonfires, apple bobbing. Wait, apple bobbing? Yes, apple bobbing. Our Lady's Hospital for Sick Children is warning against the traditional Halloween game where children dunk their heads into a bucket of water full of apples and try to pull one out with their teeth. According to Dr. Catherine McCreer, eye surgeon at the hospital, injuries that can occur as a result of a child attempting to bite the apple at force when dunking their head. She says that possible dangers, including scratches on the surface of the eye, as well as infections from dirty water, and water communally used by a number of children. The hospital says that although they are not asking people to avoid fun on this family occasion, apple bobbing is best avoided. McCreary says that she sees a variety of eye injuries happening to children at Halloween, most of which are conveniently avoidable. Well, I mean, of course they're avoidable. All injuries are avoidable. This is what we're dealing with: educated idiots. Educated idiots. The most common accidents I see include corneal abrasions and bleeding in the eye, caused by children being struck in the eye with a sharp Halloween accessory, such as swords, knives, or wands. Sounds like a game of tarot. And eye injuries as a result of poor supervision of fireworks around bonfires. Parents need to make sure accessories such as swords and other objects are soft and flexible and have dulled edge. Like, the average person is going to give their kid a switchblade knife and give the other parent is going to give their other parent like an axe from the backyard, and they're going to say, okay, lads, go hack the shit out of each other's. Fire fireworks. And you see, they think even kids are stupid. I mean, I know there's kids that do stupid things, but I mean, and I did stupid things. But the idea that, now Halloween has been reduced to little kids with knives and axes, real ones, and fireworks in a real battle. It's like the Battle of Waterloo is now. They don't learn anything from it. Of course, she discounts the thrill. Like 99.9% of the people won't be murdered by an apple, unless it's an iPhone that they accidentally swallow. But 99% of these kids will not be killed by an apple. 0.99999. But they have to turn Halloween into a neurosis. So it's not just now. It's not a bit of fun. It's a load of bollocks. It's a load of bullshit. It's like destroying children's connections. And also, she talks about contaminated water. How the fuck do you think kids get immune systems built up? Other eye injuries that doctors in A&E departments have to deal with on a busy Halloween night include cigarette burns to the cornea. Well, how does that happen? Foreign objects that get under the eyelids, bruising of the eyes, and infections as a result of poor removal of children wearing makeup. Old makeup is a breeding ground for bacteria, according to McCreevy. And then it has yikes and an exclamation mark. So kids can't dress up on Halloween. They can't go to bonfires on Halloween. They can't watch the fireworks on Halloween. And they can't stick their heads into a bucket of water to retrieve an apple because it will kill them. The apple will kill them. Now, she says this is a classic example of how it works, how the brains are altered, how the mind is altered. We hear, and there are parents out there who are really that fucking stupid that they would read this article and go, oh, little Johnny, no, Halloween for you this year. You're going to sit indoors and we're going to play Grand Theft Auto together. It's much safer. Let's see how many prostitutes we can kill. That's why, I'm telling you, a lot of people I know that instinctually defended the McCanns were not working class people. They were professional couples. I found that very interesting. It was like, do not take on Jerry and Kate McCann because they're doctors. And doctors don't do anything bad unless their name is Harold Shipman and he kills 300 women. This whole thing of education equals morality. That somehow we the goblins, we the ones that don't have, we goblins like me and you, who won't be the coffee-skinned giants of the London School of Economics, that we are instinctually poor. This is like when you look at the early works into psychopathology, and if you get my book, Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath, I talk about this. The early things were class-ridden. The early studies, even Hervey Cleckley in the 1940s was still doing it. They said that psychopathology was really a problem amongst the Irish and Italian immigrants in the Lower East Side. As if it made him psychopathology. Yet he ignored the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers and the Astors and all these other animals at the very top of the pyramid. They would be the coffee-skinned superiors. The grunts in the immigrant neighborhoods, they're all the psychopaths. The moral imbeciles. This is all rooted in this notion that they're a superior being. You know, James Corbett does a fantastic video about, I think it's called The End of the Snake Oil, and it's about Rockefeller and how the Rockefeller empire started off with a womanizing psychopath selling fake cures for cancer in the Wild West. That's how they started. They weren't a noble breed. They weren't these gods they make themselves out to be later on. But even look at the Rockefellers. They all look that. If you want to talk about goblins, have a look at them. You know, did they look like a glorious super race? Does Bill Gates? Not that we should judge them by the way they look, but they're the ones who push this bullshit on the rest of us. So this doctor talks a string of absolute shite. Verbal diarrhea, okay? But she's a doctor. And because she's a doctor, she can not only tell you that apples will kill you, doesn't mention the GMO ones, but apples will kill your children. She's also now entitled to comment on things she hasn't a second clue about. So she's now more qualified than you to talk about climate change. If she says, I'm a doctor and I believe that global warming is caused by mankind, that has more cachet than if you spend as an amateur your whole life studying the climate. Or if you were a naturalist, a botanist, someone like Bill Oddie or David Bellamy out there in the field, and you've got up close with nature for years. You haven't been like the Attenborough fucker who stays in a first-class hotel, and then they bring him in a helicopter to sit beside a gorilla's arse and fly him back again to his hotel. So it's not like these fellas were out on the field. David Bellamy, you spent years, even when he was a big star, walking around the bogs of Ireland, collecting samples, observing firsthand how the natural world functions. And he said, this climate change, it's not true. It's just a natural cycle. Boom, he was gone by the BBC like that. He would be now inferior to this Dr. Catherine McGreer. You understand? You see, they've created they've gaslighted us in this world to believe that black is white and white is black. And this is also ties in what I said at the beginning, the annihilation of the UK. They're annihilating all our societies one by one. Like when the Irish were skeptical of the Lisbon Treaty, nobody cared about immigrants. Not one single person who was anti-Lisbon Treaty in Ireland was thinking about immigrants. They were thinking about other factors like losing our independence. And yet, the number one argument, one of the main arguments they used was people who are against the Lisbon Treaty in Ireland are closed-minded paddies who hate foreigners. They bring these arguments in, and that's why you believe that you have, when Russell Brand said, well, not you, I hope the ones listening to the show are smarter than that, but like, we need change, we can't change things, we've got to change things. Yeah, who is he to speak for you? When he says we got to change things, that we is the royal we. It isn't you. You're not part of that process. You'll sit there and you'll be fucking dictated to by his we who are making the changes. You will be dictated to. You won't be sitting there on a committee with our Russ and sitting there going, well, I think we should. Oh, shut up, you. We have an expert to say what's happening. You shut up. You go back to watching your X Factor. You go back to doing whatever you do. This is not for you. Russ, as a representative of the Fabians and the London School of Economics, will hand upon you from high, just like Jesus or Moses did, the law. So when he says we have to change things, what he's really saying is the fucking law's coming and you better submit to this law. That's what he's saying. That's what he's really saying. And it saddens me and it upsets me that I have to stand here and talk to people I thought were awake and explain this to them, because they should know this already. We don't need to change. You need to change. A story about the apples taking kids' eyes out. A sane parent would look at that and say, this doctor is a muppet. Get the basin of water, get the kids, and get the apples. A lunatic parent would say, oh, no apples this year. The children might be destroyed. Now, the story is also a classic, if you notice that. It puts the emphasis on apple bobbing, but yet the doctor talks about most of the injuries are caused by fireworks or sharp objects. Kids messing around with the bonfire. But the apple bobbing gets the headline. This is so classic in journalism today, where the headline often bears very little, relationship to the body of the story. And you'll see this time and time again. This is why you have to open your eyes and see things clearly. And when I say clearly, not according to the dictates of me or anyone else, but according to what you want in your life. Look, you hear me talk. I'm going to talk about like a little paranormal thing in the last half hour of the show, because I like the 40 and stuff. But you know me, I don't buy the UFO alien stuff. But if you want to believe in that, and if that to you is true, even the reptilians thing, God bless you. I've no problem with that. I've no problem if you're a Hindu, a Muslim, a snake handler. But do not impose that upon me. And that's what's happening when you give a platform to the BBC and Russell Brand. You're allowing him to impose upon the rest of us. You're not sharing knowledge. You're not sharing a teaching. You're sharing a mandate. You're sharing what is ostensibly a list of demands. Now, when Paxman went on, what's his name show, Graham Norton, and said, "Oh well, basically, I do agree with Russell Brand that neither party has anything to offer the current political system has nothing to offer." What he's really saying is the current political system has nothing to offer, but the new third party, the Purple Party, folks, that they're planning the Purple Pill Party behind the scene, won't be one of the current parties, and that's the one that have to be voted for. That's the one that they're going to unleash. They lie, and they lie. They've been lying to you all your lives. The BBC have always told you lies. The mass media have always played games with your head. Why would they be good to you now? Why would the master who's whipped the slave suddenly be nice to him? There's two reasons for that. He's got a new job for the slave that doesn't require whipping. Or he's trying to get the slave to do something. Please, boss, don't whip me. And then the boss stops whipping him, and then the slave says, "Oh, boss, you're a great boss. What can I do for you?" And then the boss will say, "Here's what I want you to do." And you'll do it because you will associate it in a Pavlovian conditioning kind of way with salvation. So there was nothing in the political system. You saw maniacs like Tony Blair, and you saw wankers like Cameron, and the rest of them. And we know that capitalism, the current version of capitalism, is bullshit. We also know socialism is murderous in its roots. It's a scientific system, just like capitalism is murderous, but the current version. And we were sitting there for years and we got nothing. And then they stopped whipping you and they gave you Russell Brand. And what did you do? Then you said, okay, what can we do to keep this fix of dopamine running? What can we do so the massa doesn't keep on whipping us? And that's what happens. That's what happens. If you treat someone badly for so long and then you give them a kernel of happiness, they'll thank you for it and they'll forget all the years of oppression and servitude and misery that they bequeathed upon you up until that point. Because you want so much to not suffer anymore. These are very dark people, folks. I've been telling you that psychopaths are behind the scene. And psychopaths only care about one thing, power and control. And the only method of getting that power and control to them is just business. It's just business. It's not personal. That's when people used to say, well, how come these Nazis used to be able to murder these people and then go home to their wives and kids as if it never happened? Because it was just business. Just business. And that's what that is. That's when Russell Brand sits there and he talks about egalitarian socialism. That's just business. I'm not saying Russell Brand is not a psychopath. I haven't seen any proof that he is. I mean, I don't like to judge people. I'm not one of these lunatics who see psychopaths everywhere. But that's what it's like. That the psychopathic control grid has stopped whipping you for 5 minutes, and you thank the slave master for not doing it. And then you say, what can we do so you don't whip us in the future? Can you give us some more of that? Give us some more of that dopamine fix. And that's what happens, and you get trapped, and you lose yourself of dependency upon yourself and your own cognition, your own thinking. And just like that Apple story, and just like the McCanns, and just like, you'll see people having their children removed from them by horrible social workers for the littlest thing if they're poor, but the McCanns can literally discard their children while on holiday and be celebrated as heroes. And you say, what is going on with the fucking world? I can't understand it. Give me some salvation. Give me some hope. Give me something that will end this. Give me something that seems sane. Because this engineered sanity is gaslighting, and gaslighting is to change your version of reality to something it isn't until you eventually acquiesce to the psychopath or the pathological system's demands of you. We are living right now in Nurse Ratchet's ward in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's where we are living right now. And what you got with Russell Brand on Newsnight last week was medication time. And you notice the music they played in that film through the loudspeakers was crap. That's because all our music today we hear on the radio, it's all rubbish. It's all crap. The same. We're living in a psych ward, and that's why you're having all these marijuana. People must be excited about marijuana bill is going to be pushed through in the Irish Parliament. Yeah, I'm free. I can get stoned legally. What else do I need? I'm free. You know they're going to use that to push through some kind of synthesized marijuana. That's what we're living on. Nurse Ratchet's psych ward. Well, I tell you one thing. I'd rather be McMurphy lobotomized than to be like that. But ideally, I'd like to be that native who picks up that water fountain and throws that motherfucker through the window and runs to the new freedom of dawn. That's what I want to be. I don't want to be on the psych ward with the rest of them who volunteered to be there. And I don't want a lobotomy either. I want to run with the natives. Waiting for an alibi, Thin Lizzy, and you got to give it up to Gary Moore and Scott Gorham for that unbelievable twin guitar playing. Both him and Philo, Gary Moore has. Scott is still with us. Is in heaven, or whatever the afterlife is, and off this crazy planet. And that is music, folks. Remember, Russell Brand, Mr. Consciousness, Mr. Brilliant, went with and married Katy Perry. You see what I mean about being real? You don't have to wait for a consciousness revolution. You can have your conscious evolution yourself right now. A funny story about that, actually, years ago, I was waiting to see Thin Lizzy in the National Stadium in Dublin. I was about 14 or 15. And Scott Gorham came out and I got him to sign the Jailbreak album for me. And one of my friends said, is Phil coming out? And he goes, in an American accent, he goes, oh no, Phil's not coming out tonight. He's being, he's being a cunt. That's what he said. That's what you guys call it? A C-U-N-T? Yeah. That's what Philip is being tonight. That was kind of funny. Now, that was the first time I ever heard an American use that term for a guy, like we do. But yeah, Velocity of Now, we're in the final segment, the final stretch of this amazing show for me personally, because I'm telling you, I'm actually got goosebumps here. I can feel the power and the flowing into me wherever it's coming from, and it's a good power tonight. It's not Jimmy Savile's, succubus waiting to give me one when I bend over. So, I like the L40 and stuff, and I like the mysteries and all that kind of stuff, and I am interested in the paranormal, but to me it's always going to be a psychological thing and insights, for the most part, until the day when, an alien spaceship lands in my backyard, and unless it has a Red Bull logo on it, I won't believe it. But last summer I was asked to speak at the Esoteric Conference in the Middleton Arena in Manchester. And it was a very good all-day conference, and I got to meet people like Ben Stewart and Max Egan, and Lloyd Pye was there with the Skull, and it was Nick from Type 1 brought Max and Ben up from Brighton, I think. So he was there too. And they missed my talk, but my talk was about, the paranormal as seen as a psychological insight, as what does it tell us about our psychology? And I spoke about, I was there, and I spoke about archetypes and insights, and what it says about us, and also dealing with our shadow and stuff. And one of the things I spoke about was this phenomena called black-eyed children. Very interesting phenomena. All over the world, but particularly in the United States and Germany for some reason, people are reporting gangs of children who knock on their door, and it can often be in a hotel room, and these children appear and they have completely black eyes, and they want to come into the room, and they want to enter the room, and they're very intimidating, kind of like the kids in those British sci-fi movies from the 60s based on that book The Midwich Cuckoo called The Children of the Damned. Very similar to that, very intimidating children, but they have jet black eyes, and they're very commonly reported to businessmen staying in hotel rooms. They'll be in a hotel room, and a knock will come in the middle of the night, and they'll open the door, and these children are between the ages of like 9 and 12 with jet black eyes will be standing outside the hotel room saying, "Can we come in?" Now, I always believe that the shadow or the fears or the neuroses of the human condition is expressed through many of these paranormal experiences. And at the time, I speculated that this could be the shadow of the overprescription of children with things like Ritalin and all these other mind-numbing drugs they give children, that they appear as an archetypal form in front of people. Now, there's lots of examples of this all through history. But this is called a tulpa. A tulpa is a thought form that can be brought to life. If you concentrate so long, it's actually a Buddhist term, you concentrate on something for so long, or even if you don't concentrate on it, but it's in your mind, it will be expressed as a material object. So, for instance, the most famous one for me were those lights that appeared over the Washington, D.C. at the height of the Cold War. They were, they're probably the only UFO thing I can't absolutely explain as either, a weather phenomena or an unknown phenomena or a military device. They are truly mysterious. The famous shot of them appearing over the Capitol building, I believe that was a tulpa created by the sheer sense of terror and the intensity of the Cold War affecting the people in Washington, D.C. Lights appear in the skies all over the world, and shapes appear in the skies all over the world during heightened sense of social unease. And my speculation about the black-eyed children was that that's what they were. They were the unresolved neuroses of Western man failing to deal with the whole thing of poisoning the children, drugging the children, taking away their individuality, robbing their souls, because what are the eyes? The eyes are the window of the soul. And when you bomb children out on Ritalin and all these other toxic drugs, what you do is you rob them of their soul. And that was my theory. Now, there's another phenomena that's kind of similar, and this is one I think I've actually experienced myself. I was out in the backyard a while ago, a few months back, and it was on a moonlit night, and I could have sworn I saw the shape of a human being, but as like a black mist or a black form, walking along the roof of my house. And I went online and I had a look around, and I found that this phenomenon is called the shadow people. And surprisingly, it's often photographed. And again, I'm with the tulpa end of the scale. I think it's a thought form or something like that. Some people speculate they're demons. Some people speculate they're creatures from other dimensions or aliens or whatever. But there's a good article I found on a site called w67notout.com, and it's called The Shadow. I got this through the Red Ice site. The Shadow People Who Stalk Our World, and it has some very interesting pictures. And it talks about these shadow people. And according to the Paranormal Society, they say shadow people, now this is just their speculation. Remember, the Paranormal Society would be full of all kinds of, ghost hunters and imagine things like that. And they tend to extrapolate or impose, prejudiced things on them. Just like MUFON, the organization MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, exists for no other reason than to make you believe they're alien spaceships. No other reason. Because it's essentially at its core a military operation to hide secret black projects. But the Paranormal Society write, shadow people are not human entities. We don't believe they're ghosts, but don't believe they are demons either. But on a scale, we'd say shadow people lean more towards the negative side, especially given the bad feelings we get from the vibes they give off. It's suggested that their presence means something bad or something bad will happen. Well, the one that I thought I saw, I did get that feeling that it was like not a pleasant experience to be around this thing. If that's what I saw, I mean, it seemed like it was a shadow of a man walking across the roof of my house. But at the same time too, I wasn't terrified or anything like that. I don't think anything happened afterwards. But these things are very interesting because are we seeing the shadow of the problems with modern people actually literally being expressed as literally a shadow? See, unfortunately, a lot of people who study this stuff, they don't study psychology. They read UFO books and they read ghost books, and they take it all. They tend to take it all very literally, and a lot of that has to do with the spiritualist movement. The spiritualist movement. Now, I'm not saying that these things don't exist, that these things couldn't be interdimensionals. They probably could be. I don't know. And this is just how I'm trying to. This is how I deal with it. Okay, for now, until I've got more different kinds of proof. But when spiritualism first started, did you know spiritualism was enormous? Especially after World War I, because so many people had lost their sons in the trenches in that big, huge sacrifice for the royal families and for the Federal Reserve, because they needed to kill as many Europeans and Turks as possible. That's why no one can really understand why that war started. It was just basically a big population culling. They had to kill all the young men, because they would have been all unemployed and they would have been rioting and they wouldn't have been able to get their Fabian, the society, the Fabians wouldn't be able to get their socialists, thing through. So they started a war because they couldn't justify their existence. And that's why you have the likes of George Bernard Shaw, saying that, praising Stalin's purges and so on. But anyway, is the shadow people something else? Are we, because we're on we've been going on SSRIs, and because we kind of live in a post-religious period, not necessarily a bad thing, by the way, because the fluff and plasticness of society, are these shadow people appearing for the same reason, that we're not confronting the shadow of our society? We want Obama or Oprah or Simon Cowell and X Factor to bring meaning to our lives. We don't want to do it in ourselves. And then people say, what can they photograph? Well, these thought forms, they're as real as anything. They actually manifest in the material world. They manifest out of nothing, but they're somehow connected to consciousness. Now, Wikipedia describes the shadow people like this: a shadow person, also known as a shadow figure, shadow being, or black mass. That's an interesting term, isn't it? Black mass. Very interesting, actually. Is an alleged paranormal entity. Paranormal researcher Heidi Hollis has expressed the belief that shadow people are malevolent supernatural entities. There's a thread on the subject at Above Top Secret Forum. One gentleman, EM2013, writes, and this is only speculation, but it's an interesting story. I've seen hundreds of shadows with my wife, best friend, and a few others. They are hard to dismiss as mere coincidences of the darkness, hallucinations caused by paranoia or group lies. Sometimes they come alone, sometimes they come in pairs or as a group. We've seen armies in Canada of these things before, and I wish I were kidding as frightening as they are. And that's very interesting that, that these things are appearing more and more. I heard more about them. I can remember, and I wish this was on YouTube, about 10 years ago, David McWilliams, he was an economist here, but he also had a very interesting magazine program on the afternoons on Irish TV. And one week he covered paranormal issues. It was ghosts. It was ghosts because he wanted to do a thing on ghosts. And he came out and said he actually believed that ghosts are real on some level. And one of the videos they showed was one of the most remarkable paranormal videos I've ever seen. It is not on YouTube. Don't even bother looking. But it is fantastically mind-blowing. This family in Northern Ireland had an old video camera with the tape in it, and they were filming somewhere out in County Antrim. She was just filming the kids and the husband on the grass in front of her, about 20 feet, and suddenly, beside the husband and walking towards the camera, a being appears almost like out of dots, but stride as a human being, but it was black though, was unmistakable. It was coming, and she says quite clearly on the tape, very calmly, I think I see a ghost. And then it kind of vanished a little bit. But they played the tape a few times, and this thing literally was what these shadow people things are described as, a black human-shaped mass that began walking towards the camera and vanished. And I've not been able to find that tape anywhere because it's one of the most compelling pieces of paranormal evidence I've ever seen. Just because I don't believe all this stuff literally as ghosts or demons or archons or aliens doesn't mean I'm not interested in it. I take a standoff position on this stuff. And the first place I always look is human psychology. And I always look to the archetypes, and then I always look to the shadow, and I always look to things that may cause this through the personality, through a projection, or through a neuroses, because I think that can count for a lot of it. But that's still fantastic as well. To me, that's far more interesting. To me, it's far more interesting that these things are appearing could be appearing as a reflection of a neuroses in humanity, as much more than their demons or their monsters or their aliens. To me, that's much more interesting. That's just me. But that's a much more interesting thing to speculate, because that means we're being given a message. Just like, see, people think that nightmares only happen when you sleep. But nightmares, they're waking nightmares. And things like the black-eyed children, and things like these monsters, these ghosts, these shadow people, and things like that experience I had in New York where I was standing on a subway, and this guy got on 33rd, this Asian-looking man got beside me on 33rd Street, a perfectly normal-looking guy, and I was overcome with an enormous sense of dread and terror that the devil's standing next to me. These are your waking nightmares, and your waking nightmares are just as useful as your sleeping nightmares, because what happens in your dreams is giving you insights from deep within your subconscious to help you resolve both poles of cognitive functioning. So if you dream certain archetypes and symbols in your dreams, it's allowing you in the waking world, in this version of reality, to try and resolve those problems. This is why dreams are. This is one thing that Sigmund Freud deserves a lot of credit for, is because his work on the dream stuff is fantastic. It really was. Except, like everything else he did, it came down to sexual neuroses, because most of his subjects were the upper echelon of Viennese society, and a lot of them were just weirdos and oddballs, rich people. They were probably, the Fabians of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. But they were all sex freaks and weirdos, and he imposed that on the whole of humanity. He also said something else, Sigmund Freud. He said, the Irish were the only race in the world who you could not psychoanalyze. And that ties in, when you think about that, and he said the Irish and Irish-like races, like the Scots, you cannot psychoanalyze them. They're on a different frequency. And I was reading Dion Fortune's book about psychic attack, and she says the reason why more people in Celtic countries like Cornwall, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and Brittany experience ghosts and see ghosts is because they're Celtic, and this is what she said, they're tuned into a slightly different vibration or whatever, and they see and experience these things. Now, they didn't psychoanalyze the Irish, but they definitely gave us fluoride. And that's very interesting. Why we were picked for that. Now, that doesn't mean we're spiritually better, but definitely we have a different. The Irish do have a different view of reality. I know we do. I can't explain. And people of Irish heritage and Scots, well, the Scots are the Irish anyway. They're just a bunch of paddies who moved north, most of them. But it's six back to attack the Romans back in the day, and so many English people and so many Americans. They're all the world. There's a lot of Irish seed has been spread around. The Irish men have spread their love around the world a lot. And it's gotten to other groups, and you do wonder if there was something to that. Like Julius Caesar said that about them, and the Romans said that about them, and Carl Jung said that about the Irish. The Irish had, and here's Dion Fortune saying, the Stoic, Central European people did not see as many ghosts because they're not tuned in the same vibration as the Celtic people are, and this is also why these parts of the world are loaded with monuments. I can't fully explain it. Is there something to it? But I grew up with this. I grew up in Dublin, but ghost stories were a big part of my life, even as a kid in the 70s. I can remember my grandmother and my aunts all talking about ghost stories and things like that in the city. And these were, these weren't like rural peasants by any means. They had, they weren't, they lived in a large city, and yet they used to talk about these stories. And, I think it was my great-grandmother, when she died, a seagull flew. They were all sitting around. The priest was giving the last rites because they were expecting her to go. And the window was open, and a huge seagull flew right into the bedroom. She lived over the River Liffey, and she used to feed the seagulls. And a seagull flew right in, landed on the end of the bed, perched there with everyone seeing it, and then flew off again after like a few seconds. And, those stories are not unusual in Irish families. People's, is there something about us? Are we a bit different? Are we tuned in a bit differently, like, say, Native Americans? This might also explain why there's always been a need to kind of wipe us out. There's always been this kind of desire to just wipe us out. I don't know what it is. And maybe Dion Fortune is right about that. I know people here who, they're atheists and they're skeptics, yet they will talk about these paranormal experiences they've had, but very different than like your average like skeptic on the internet. Some American guy going, "Oh, you're all retards, you're all morons, you're all superstitious." Not like that. They'll actually talk about it and says, but it was very interesting, but they won't apply because of their who they are, how they think. They don't apply an automatic meaning to it the same way as their ancestors would. And then there's other ones who are in complete denial. They do see things. So are things like, but I do feel that human beings all have this ability. And these shadow people and these black-eyed children, they could be the beginning of a new kind of tuning in. That people are, it could be a compensation for all the chemicals we're fed, or a way of warning us. When your body has a foreign object in it, it will produce antibodies. Well, when your psyche has a foreign or a toxic body in it, it will produce antibodies of the psyche. This is why so many people tell me they were in relationships with psychopaths. They would say they would experiences like they'd lie in bed at night and they would see like black snakes like crawling across the ceiling. One woman told me that she was going through unbelievable gaslighting, and she was in such anguish one day. And this is a banker, a woman in Chicago. She said she walked out into her backyard and there was a big silver ball hovering, like she said, like a spaceship over the backyard. And that was the psyche telling these people to get away from this beast. And that's what the shadow people and the shadow children might be. Our psyche's telling us to get away from this bullshit Fabian society that's being inflicted upon us, and stop believing in it, and stop reading stories about how bombing for apples can take your eyeball out. I do believe sincerely at some level that this stuff goes on. So look out for the archetypes. Look out for the meanings. Try to find... See, again, we're back to independence. instead of going to a shrink, you can be your own shrink. I find things like the tarot is very handy for that. I'm an avid user of the tarot. I use it every day, but I don't use it for divination or fortune telling. I use it to help me walk myself. Maybe I'll do a program on it at some point in the future. But I've developed a tarot method that actually it's almost like a dialogue between my consciousness and my subconsciousness to help me to resolve those two poles of cognitive functioning. So I call it my shrink in my pocket. So if I have an issue that I want to deal with, well, rather than going to a shrink or getting SSRIs or someone else, talking to a friend is great, but a lot of things you have to do yourself, right? I find the tarot, because it's pictorial and not alphanumerical, it works really well because it's pictorial. It gets into the right brain, and because your right brain is switched on a lot through the symbols and through the artwork, what happens then is your bullying, domineering left brain stops telling your right brain it's an idiot, because that's what the left brain does. It tells the right brain it is an idiot. So I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. It has been very enjoyable for me. It's been great to be back. And although I've tried to be, fun about these things, we are really in the Battle of Armageddon in many ways, and it's taking place in the domain of human consciousness. And my name is Thomas Sheridan, and this is the Velocity of Now on the Type 1 Radio Network. Thank you for listening in. Thank you to Steve and Nick, especially Steve. He arranged all the songs tonight. And I want to finish with one last song by Thin Lizzy. And this song, it's about Notre Dame. Phil Lynott wrote it about after reading about Notre Dame. But it's really about how we have to stop giving over our consciousness to salvation from above, because these angels can often be angels of death. And that's the title of this song. So good night, take care of yourself, and I'll see you next week. And thank you for listening. And this is Thin Lizzy with The Angel of Death.